Welcome to People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.
You are listening to People, Power, and Politics with your host, Pearl Phillip, where we break down the big issues shaping our city and spotlight the voices driving change at every level. Today, we are joined by a seasoned community leader and political insider, Henry Butler, Vice Chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, longtime District Manager of Community Board 3 in Bed-Stuy, and someone on the front lines of neighborhood advocacy and borough-wide decision-making. We are talking about the state of Brooklyn politics, the party's direction, endorsements, hitting up ahead of the 2025 mayoral race, and how ranked choice voting is shifting the game for everyone. So stay with us. We've got a lot to unpack with Henry Butler on People, Power, and Politics. Welcome, sir. It is such an honor and pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're so very welcome. So looking at Brooklyn politics and leadership, you've been deeply involved in Brooklyn politics for years. How has the borough's political landscape changed, and what direction do you see it heading in the next 5 years?
I think when you look at Brooklyn politics, we are actually leading the movement. If you look at all of our elected positions on a higher level, for example, the mayor from Brooklyn, the public advocate, Brooklyn, right? The New York State Attorney General, Brooklyn. And our county chair now is the first black woman to be the leader of the Kings County Democratic Party. So I think when you look at, we are showing the rest of the country what diversity looks like, right? We've been hearing a lot of conversation about it, but Brooklyn is showing everyone what true diversity looks like in the strength of diversity. And going forward, I think we're going to continue that movement in the next 5 years of becoming an even more diverse party. You look at the demographic changes that are taking place. You see other groups that are coming in. If you look at the Asian population, how they increase their political strength with several Asian elected officials being elected in South Brooklyn. So I think you're going to continue seeing the changes of diversity within Brooklyn, and Brooklyn will be leading the way of showing the strength of diversity.
Okay. Now, as Vice Chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, how do you balance party unity with the growing diversity of ideologies within the Democratic base?
So, with that question, we always say we're a big tent party, right? All Democratic ideas and values are supposed to be welcome. And that's my attitude. Brooklyn is a very big borough with different ideas and opinions amongst Democratic voters. For example, Bed-Stuy is not Bay Ridge, right? Brownsville is not Cobble Hill or Dumbo, right? But at the end of the day, those neighborhoods are majority Democratic voters. Now, what may be best for Bed-Stuy or Brownsville or East New York may not be best for a Cobble Hill or Borum Hill or Brooklyn Heights. And I think that needs to be respected amongst all Democratic voters. Like, there is no one size fits all, right? So we have to deal with the different experiences of all the voters within our parties. I think when we come at it in that way, which is how I do it, I sit down and try to understand the ideas and values of other Democratic voters from other neighborhoods. I think then that we can sit down and come together on coming up with solutions to the problems, even within our party.
And thank you for that. So you mentioned gentrification earlier on, and some areas are gentrifying more rapidly than others, and Brooklyn is a microcosm of America. So what are the party's priorities in addressing neighborhood the different neighborhoods, and you did mention some of them, the economic and racial equity?
For the party and the leadership, we want to support policies that empower those residents, those longtime residents from our communities who are being displaced, right? I mean, if you look at the last census numbers, you see, for example, in the Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights area, those two neighborhoods had the highest black population lost in the last 10 years, right? So we want to make sure that we are supporting policies and programs that uplift those who have been there the longest, that make it easier for them to stay and raise families there. I was raised in Bedford-Stuyvesant. I was blessed and fortunate, my wife and I, to be able to get a home there through a program, right? Government-funded program where we know today we wouldn't be able to afford a home in Bed-Stuy now, and we have decent salaries. So we want to just make sure that we are supporting programs and policies that will uplift and take care of those longtime residents that grew up, a lot of them born and raised in these communities.
Now, you mentioned Bed-Stuy, that you were born and raised there, and you've served as a district manager of Community Board 3 for quite a long time. How has that grassroots experience informed your leadership at the borough-wide level?
Great question. So a lot of people, unfortunately, don't know the strength and the makings of community boards. One of the things I learned being originally chairperson and then becoming the district manager of Community Board 3 is about budget and budget proposal and getting funding in your district. And community boards play a major role in that. The budget requests start on the community board level, right? And then you take those requests, to the elected officials, to the borough president, to your local council member, to the mayor's office, eventually to the commissioners. I've had several meetings when I was district manager, sitting with commissioners, requesting funding for projects in my district, which I can say under my tenure, we were very successful in getting funding for major projects in our district. So for me, it's about, as the vice chair of the party, is educating my fellow leaders, district leaders, about the strength and power of community boards, and also reaching out to residents and trying to get them engaged and involved in their community boards. A lot of times people feel they don't have a voice within their own neighborhood, within their own block. Mm-hmm. And I always encourage everyone, go to your community board meetings. That's where your strength is. That's where your voice is. Community boards were created for the people, for residents, local residents, to have a say-so in what takes place in their district.
Okay, so let's look at voter engagement and the upcoming 2025 primary, specifically the NYC mayoral race. Voter turnout, especially in local elections, is a persistent challenge. What are you and the party doing to increase engagement at the community level?
That is, for me personally, my number one priority is to increase voter turnout. Mm-hmm. Particularly in the non-presidential years, right? So when you look at our communities, the black communities, when it's presidential, we're voting at a 60-70% clip. Then when you look at the local, even for a mayor's race, we're voting at 15, 20, 25%. When it's actually your local officials who determine what will take place in your district, what funding comes for your school, what funding comes for housing, what funding comes for your parks, right, for your hospitals. So one of the things we're doing, for example, is having this forum that's coming up next week, right, that's particularly focused on the black agenda, right, because a lot of times within the black community, we feel like we're not being listened to. We're not being heard. Our concerns are not being addressed. Everyone else's issues are being addressed, except black people, who are the number one supporters and voters of the Democratic Party.
That's
right.
True.
If you just look at the last presidential, black women, 93% for Kamala. Black men, 78% for Kamala. As much as they try to criticize black men, they were the second highest voting demographic for Kamala Harris, black men, in the high 70 percentile, right? So I think that low voter turnout is a system of frustration. Black residents not feeling they're being heard, even though we are coming out and voting Democrat after Democrat after Democrat every year. but then there's no conversation about what is the wants and needs of our community. Because as I stated, Bed-Stuy is not Brooklyn Heights. So one of the forums we're doing, right, the voter engagement, when we do the voter education, voter drives, we go to different events where we're tabling our different, not just the leaders, but our clubs. A lot of us have political clubs where they participate, and you just have to be out in the streets knocking on doors. My club, Democratic Club, VITA, the Vanguard Independent Democratic Association, we just went to the Nights of Development and we're knocking on doors and just listening to the concerns of the voters. So the outreach is outreach in order to get people interested in the local elections.
So you mentioned your mayoral forum coming up and the focus on the Black agenda. Can you expand on that and tell us what attendees can expect?
So for this forum, we wanted to make sure, when I say we, mean my local district leaders, Black district leaders who are participating in our clubs, we want to make sure that the issues are going to be addressed. Right, so we don't want a situation where everybody's sitting up there and criticizing one another, complaining about this one and that one. We want to hear from you, the candidate, what specific policies that you have that target the Black community. So that's why for this forum, it's going to be the individual candidates will speak one-on-one with the moderator. Not them all up there together, going back and forth. So that way, the moderator can ask the candidate, well, what's your specific policy, for example, on housing? Gentrification is taking place within the Black community. Black home ownership has gone down. What are you going to do to address it? What are you going to do to address small Black businesses? You know, within my district in Bed-Stuy on Tompkins Avenue, we have what we call Black Girl Magic because there's so many young Black women own businesses on Tompkins Avenue. What are you going to do to address them being able to stay in those buildings, right, that where they can afford to pay that rent, that retail rent for their space, right? What are you going to do about the health concerns within our community? You know, dealing with our hospitals. You know, what are you going to do about when it comes to, you know, I've already mentioned housing, education within our community, right? We see what's happening with education within our community. We see everything that's going on with DEI and getting rid of the Black curriculums. What are your specific plans that's going to target the Black community? That's what we want to hear at this forum.
Okay. I know one of the candidates released recently a Black agenda. Yeah. So the Brooklyn Democratic Party has had significant endorsements, one for Andrew Cuomo from prominent figures like your chair, Rodney Bishop Hamelin. How do you respond to critics who argue that these endorsements might alienate progressive voters, especially given Cuomo's controversial tenure as governor?
Right. So for full transparency, I also endorsed Governor Cuomo for mayor. It's funny that whenever endorsements take place, we always say, how is the progressive going to react? We always say that. But when progressives endorse someone, we never say, how are the centrists or the moderate Democrats going to react, right? Once again, we're a big tent, right? We all don't think the same. We're not monolithic as Democratic voters. But yet the focus is always on the feelings of progressives, which I will say are mostly young white people, are usually progressives. But as I stated earlier, the base, the heart and soul of the Democratic Party are Blacks. And we tend to be more moderate and centrist if you look at our policies and what we believe in. So with that, I guess would say, to me, you judge someone by their record, and gay marriage happened under Governor Cuomo, passed on to him, right, on the state level. The increase in the minimum wage happened under Governor Cuomo, and several other policies that would be deemed progressive, I guess called common sense, right? But we like to label everything.
Yes, we do. Right.
I just call it just common sense things that have passed under him. Bail reform, once again, right? Who are the victims of the bail system? Black people.
Black men specifically.
And Black men specifically. And we led that cause, Black people, led by Assemblymember Latrice Walker from Brownsville, right? Yet we try to label it progressive to give them credit for that when it was Black people who led that. So to that, I say we're a big tent party. We have a lot of ideas. And as far as Cuomo specifically, look at all of the so-called, and I'm doing a quote sign, progressive policies that have passed under him as the governor.
All right. So looking at ranked choice voting, which was introduced in the last election, it has reshaped the way candidates campaign and voters engage in elections. From your perspective, how has this system impacted local races in Brooklyn, and how do you see it influencing the upcoming mayoral race?
When it comes to ranked choice voting, I think people are still learning it. I don't know if it's been fully embraced by every demographic or every group. I do know, I'm sure younger voters tend to do it more than older voters. And I don't have no scientific proof of that, but just in my conversations with people in my age demographic and just black voters in general, black voters seem to have the attitude, I know who I'm supporting, I'm voting for this one person, and that's it. I'm not doing this whole ranking thing, particularly seniors, right? Seniors, they don't get into the ranking. They like, this is who I want, this is who I'm voting for. It was created supposedly to make it more competitive for those who may not have the name recognition or the money, right, to be able to keep them in the game. But with campaign finance laws that we have that give matching funds, if you are a serious candidate, you should be able to meet the threshold to get matching funds. So the money issue should really not be a factor. I think what it has done really, it keeps people in the race longer, candidates in the race longer, because before ranked choice, if a candidate saw that they were polling at 1%, 2%, 4%, eventually they would drop out. And then they would give their endorsement.
And drop out.
Right. And they would give their endorsement to someone else that they may agree with in policy. But not everyone stays to the end because of ranked choice voting, and a lot of times it's almost like looking for a miracle. But at the end of the day, so far, those who have been projected to win have won their races. It just took a little longer because of ranked choice voting. Right. In the last mayoral race, then Eric Adams was projected to win the race. It just took him several rounds to win, but in the end, he won the race, right? So to me, it's almost like as if it was created to prevent certain people from winning races, right?
Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, certain people, or you want to leave it at that?
No, I just leave it at that. And I'm not even talking about this year specifically, but it just like it was created to, we'll put together a plan, and all these people will get together and say, don't rank this one and don't rank that one, right? Almost like that. It was created to prevent certain people with maybe certain ideologies from winning the race. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right. So what keeps you motivated? Politics is often a grind. What drives your commitment to public service and community leadership?
Everything that's happening now, right? So let me back up. I'm a history buff, okay, right? Particularly, political science major, the history of my people. And my family's from the South, right? The deep South, Alabama, Mississippi, right? So I know about a
little bit of that accent.
Yes.
Can you just drop a little bit of it? For me?
Like y'all all about to stop that cussing, right? Because we used to go down south every summer when we was a little kid. Like that was our vacation back then, going down south to all the way to Alabama. So I know what hardcore racism looks like, right? There was an incident in the early 80s where they found a young black man lynched, and it was like a mile from my grandparents' house. And this was in the 80s when this happened. So knowing what my ancestors went through, and not even that long ago, like just my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, right? And knowing what we as people, from the African diaspora, what we go through, whether it's those, from the motherland, those from the Caribbean, those who are born and raised here. At the end of the day, we're black people. Yes. And knowing the struggles and what our ancestors went through to get us to this point, that's what keeps me going. Like, I feel like I cannot let them down, right? Whether it's those who came over on that boat, those who lived through enslavement, those who lived through Jim Crow and legalized segregation and the fights and the struggles they went through. I can't sit back and whine and complain when they had it far worse than us, right? And history repeats itself. People are going crazy, what's happening now, but this is America. Right? This is what happens in America. We take a step forward, and then we take 3 or 4, 10 steps back.
Yep.
That's what America does when it comes to, including people in this so-called American dream. Right? That's just what America does. So if you know your history, what's happening right now should not be a surprise to you. And it isn't to me. This is just what America does. It's been the history of America. And I want a better life for my sons. Right? I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, right? Boys. And I want to leave them, with a better world, to grow in, and if they want to have kids, right, that is supposed to be the goal. Like, each generation is supposed to get better.
Better, yes.
Right, so that's what motivates me, just to keep going. My ancestors and my kids today.
And these are very, very good reasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, how can one learn more about the Brooklyn Democratic Party, whether they want to support, volunteer, donate, and also share some final words about the Democratic primary to voters, and which is happening on June the 24th, 2025?
So one of the ways they can go to the website, which is brooklyndems.com. They can also email us at K as in kite, C as in county, D as in Democrat, C as in county, 2020 at gmail.com. To send an email, they can email us, and we will add them onto our e-blast list, which we send out an e-blast once, sometimes twice a week, just keeping everybody updated. People should also reach out to their district leaders within your assembly district. So district leaders, we actually make up the Democratic party. But what I mean by that is when there's issues to be voted on by the party, it's the district leaders that take place in doing that voting on policies when it comes to where the party is going to stand on specific issues. So it's your local district leaders that you should be reaching out to. And they should speak to the leaders about becoming what we call a county committee members. Those are the voters in that district who also have voting power as a county committee member. It's actually an elected position. It's a volunteer position, the same way district leaders is a volunteer position for the party. Okay. So they definitely should go to the website and also send us an email, and please reach out to your local district leaders. Like, I represent the 56th Assembly District, which covers Bed-Stuy and North Crown Heights. So anybody that's listening, if you live in Bed-Stuy, North Crown, and 56, you can reach out to myself, Henry Butler, or my co-leader, Kanasia Trainham Cooper. Each district has a male and a female leader.
Okay. So some final words about the primaries coming up, and also give some information about the forum that you have as well.
Yes. Listen, every year is an important election year to me. I know every year we always go, this is the most important election of our life. People always say that, and people get tired of hearing that. But, this year, with what's happening in Washington, leadership matters. It really does, specifically on a local level, because the way you defeat Washington is about who you have on the local and state level, right? So on the ballot, we're voting for a new city comptroller, who controls the money, controls your pensions, controls investments, right? In Brooklyn, there's a race for borough president, a challenge to the sitting borough president. There's several judge races that are taking place. That's something us as district leaders that we focus on a lot, because in order to get to be on the ballot on the Democratic line, that goes through the district leaders, those who are running for judge, or those who are already judged and running to become to the Supreme Court in the Brooklyn courts, right? That goes to district leaders, so they should look into that. And then, of course, there's the mayor's race. Make sure, all I would say on that, make sure you do your research. Don't listen to whatever you see on social media or the little quick bits and the negative attacks. I would say do your research and vote for someone who has your beliefs, right? Things that you believe in, policies that you believe in, Do your research. There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. I think far too often people want a perfect candidate. This candidate has to agree with 100% of what I agree on. That's not possible, right? You vote for someone you vote your values, is what I would say. You vote your values. And as far as the forum coming up, the forum is taking place this Wednesday, April 23rd, at the historic Medgar Evers College, 1650 Bedford Avenue. Like I said, we're going to have all the candidates there. They'll be coming up one at a time to be interviewed by the moderator for like 15, 20 minutes, where it's going to be very specific. We're going to ask them to be very specific about their policies, if they were mayor, targeting the black community, not people of color, the black community. That's what we want to hear about.
Okay, so thank you so very much. It was such a pleasure having you. That was Henry Butler, Vice Chair of the Brooklyn Democratic Party, offering insight, history, and a whole lot of perspective on where Brooklyn's politics are headed. Whether it's community-level leadership or borough-wide influence, one thing's clear. The future of our democracy is being shaped right here, block by block, ballot by ballot. As we look ahead to the mayoral race and beyond, conversations like this remind us that people's power isn't just a slogan, it's a strategy. I am Pearl Phillip, and this is People, Power, and Politics. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most of all, stay powerful. Until next time.
People, Power, and Politics. Hard talk, riveting interviews, community updates, in-depth analysis. That's People, Power, and Politics. We tell it to you as it is. No holds barred. You are the people, you have the power. We bring you the politics. To listen to our show, be a guest, or to advertise, visit www.pppradio.nyc. That's www.pppradio.nyc.